Begin today in the Ayin Zayin Amud Aleph, right at the beginning of the Amud. So this is continuing from what it said in the Mishnah, that the time of Afaris Nedarim is until the end of the day. And the Mishnah used the example of the night of Shabbos, the day of Shabbos. And it said in the Mishnah, it depends which time of the day you made the neder, that's how long you're going to have until the end of the day. But then the Gemara brought a Braise that had other opinions, that it's actually a 24-hour period. So in connection to Shabbos, in nullifying the Nedarim on Shabbos, the Gemara here brings Mishnah all the way at the end of Masechta Shabbos. Tanan Asam, so we learned there in the end of Masechta Shabbos, Mefirin Nedarim b'Shabbos. You're allowed to nullify Nedarim on Shabbos, a husband to the wife or a father to the daughter. And also, V'nish'alin l'Nedarim shehein V'nish'alin l'Nedarim, you're allowed to go to a Chacham and request a heter. And here regarding this it says shehein l'tzayrech haShabbos. Oh, but that's only if you need this heter for the purpose of Shabbos. Let's say she made a neder, or a person made a neder that he's not going to eat, and he wants to eat the Shabbos Suda. So for that you're allowed to go to the Chacham. But stam to be mata neder by a Chacham, it's not allowed if it's not l'tzayrech haShabbos. So the Ran explains, because when it comes to being mata neder by a Chacham, so that in a way is similar to sort of using a bezdin. One of the things that's not allowed on Shabbos is you're not allowed to paskin a din by a bezdin on Shabbos. So therefore, over there, the hataras nedarim by a chacham is only allowed if it's a need for Shabbos. But when it comes to afaras nedarim, which a husband or a father does for the wife or the daughter, that's not doim at all to a bezdin. And also another point that Ran says is the day is going to pass. We'll see soon in the Gemara. The Gemara will say this svara as well. If the day is going to pass, so then you won't be able to do that Afaras Nedarim tomorrow. So you can't say to wait till tomorrow like by the Chacham. You could just wait till tomorrow. So that's why over there you can be made for any Nedarim on Shabbos. Right? The next day you can't nullify anymore. Okay. Now the Shaila was asked here, Mefirin Nedarim b'Shabbos. So the Gemara discusses this here. When it says in the Braise, or in this Mishnah rather, that you can be made for the Nedarim on Shabbos, L'tzayrech HaShabbos, is that also only L'tzayrech HaShabbos? And so when it says in the Mishnah L'tzayrech HaShabbos, it goes on both, Edilma Afila Shalei L'tzayrech, or is it even not L'tzayrech HaShabbos? The way I just explained it actually. Okay, but let's see, the Gemara will bring here a machlekes about this. So Toshem As, the Gemara says, let's see, the Tani Rav Zuti Debei, Rav Papi, Ein Mefirin Nedarim. He taught a brayse that says you're not allowed to nullify the nedarim, and this is again the father or the husband, ela l'tzayrech haShabbos. Only if it's a neder that has to be nullified for the purpose of Shabbos, to eat the Shabbos Suda or something like that. So that's the brayse. Rav Ashi, so Rav Ashi, when he heard this brayse, he said, no, but holit nanachi. If you go back to the Mishnah that we learned before, Nayin Vav Amud Beis, from our Mishnah we see that we did not learn this way. Because what does the Mishnah say? Nadra im chashecha, if she made a neder on Shabbos, right before it's dark, a few minutes before the end of Shabbos, so mefer law actually techshach. So then, according to the Tan of the Mishnah, the husband only has time to nullify the nedarim until it becomes dark. So what does this mean? Are we talking about a Shabbos that you're nullifying it because you're going to have a benefit of nullifying this for Shabbos or not? There's no benefit for this on Shabbos, as the Gemara says. If you're going to say L'tzayrech HaShabbos in, you could only nullify the Nedarim for the purpose of Shabbos. Shaloi L'tzayrech HaShabbos loi, but if it's not for the purpose of Shabbos, then you can't nullify the Nedarim. Ma yirya chashecha. Why is it mentioning over here that it's the time that by dark, when it becomes dark, you can't nullify the nedarim? This type of neder that was made over here you should not be able to nullify it even on Shabbos itself. The shaloi l'tzayrech, the bachir az, the shaloi l'tzayrech Shabbosu. This is a neder which is not, you're nullifying it not l'tzayrech Shabbos. How does the Gemara know that this is a neder that you're not nullifying l'tzayrech Shabbos? Very simple, because you're nullifying this neder 2 minutes before Shkiyah. That can't be something which is L'tzayrech Shabbos. Shabbos is already ending. So whatever neder it is, let's say she made a neder she's not going to eat. It's just 2 minutes before the end of Shabbos. This is not something that's going to disturb the Shabbos. You just wait another 2 minutes. Right. Again, so the Gemara is saying it must, so if you're going to tell me that a neder, right, what the Gemara is saying is, if this is a neder, if you're going to tell me that a neder that's not L'tzayrech Shabbos, you cannot nullify, why would the Mishnah say that at night, then you won't be able to nullify it, even on Shabbos itself, even in the middle of the day, you can't nullify this neder, because we know that this is not a neder which is L'tzayrech Shabbos. So if so, even in the middle of the day, you shouldn't be able to nullify it. Elamai, what's the Mishnah saying? that this neder that's made right before the end of the day, the Mishnah is trying to say 2 points. First point, it's trying to say that sometimes you only have a couple of minutes to be made for the neder. And another point the Mishnah is telling you here, and that's what the Mishnah said, this whole example, Dafka regarding Shabbos, that even though a neder that's made a couple of minutes before the end of Shabbos, there is no tzorech Shabbos to nullify this neder. It's not going to be used for Shabbos, but nevertheless, you still could nullify it on Shabbos. And again, like I mentioned before, the svara is because if you're not going to nullify it in these last few minutes, it's going to be too late to nullify it at night, because you only have the time until then. So you can clearly see that the Mishnah is saying, not like the Braise, that you can only nullify a neder on Shabbos if it's for the tzorech of Shabbos itself. So the Gemara says, okay, you're right, Tanoi, this is Taka Machlokes Tanoim. And here the Gemara is going to explain that this is connected to the Machlokes Tanoim. What's Taka, how long do you have to nullify the Nedarim? Is it a 24-hour period, or is it until the end of that day? So as we learned before, Hafaras Nedarim Kol Hayom, so one opinion is the Hafaras Nedarim is until the end of that day. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Amru, but these two Tanaim, they said, Me'eis le'eis, that Afaris Nedarim is a whole 24-hour period. And we already learned in the previous Amud, the Hezbollah of this Machlokes. So now the Gemara explains, we can say that the Machlokes, whether you could nullify Nedarim on Shabbos, even if it's not L'tzorech HaShabbos, is dependent on this Machlokes. Laman de Alma Kol Hayom in Tfeiloi, the opinion that says you could only nullify the Nedarim this day that you made the Neder, until the shki, until the end of the day, but more than that not. So then afilu shaloi l'tzorech HaShabbos. So even a neder that the nullifying it is not for the purpose of Shabbos mefer, you have to allow him to nullify the neder of Shabbos, because if you're not going to allow him, so then it's going to be too late. You're taking away the entire opportunity to nullify the nedarim. The other opinion, the other two Tanaim that said that you can always nullify a neder for a 24-hour period. So you can never say that I have to allow to nullify the neder on Shabbos, because otherwise it's going to be too late. No matter when you make the neder on Shabbos, you're always going to have time to do it after Shabbos. So therefore, l'tzorech HaShabbos in, shaloi l'tzorech HaShabbos loi. So if you make the neder on Shabbos, if it's for the purpose of Shabbos, you're allowed to nullify it. But if it's not for the purpose of Shabbos, so then you're not going to nullify it. So therefore, this whole machlokes of the Braise of the Mishnah is dependent on this machlokes. How long of a time do you have to nullify the nedarim? Okay, now going back to another point that was mentioned before in this Mishnah that we quoted from Masechta Shabbos. So it said there, v'nish'alam l'nedarim shehein l'tzorech HaShabbos, that you can request from a chacham a heter for a neder, but that's only if it's for the purpose of Shabbos itself. A chacham, you have time to go to him tomorrow. So on that, the Shaila was asked, when did the Mishnah say that? If you did not have any time to go to the chacham before Shabbos, whether the chacham was not around or the neder was made right before Shabbos, you couldn't get to the chacham before Shabbos, so then you're allowed to do the hataras nedarim on Shabbos if it's l'tzorech Shabbos. Or maybe that Mishnah there is saying, even if you had time to do the hataras nedarim before Shabbos, but for whatever reason you were lazy, you didn't do the hataras nedarim before Shabbos, so now on Shabbos itself you need this hataras nedarim for the purpose of Shabbos, you'll be allowed. Toshamas, the Gemara says, coming here at Ayah, there's dakiku le rabbanon, the Rabbanan that were matan nedarim, so they attended to, they paid attention to Lebrei de Rav Zutra, the son of Rav Zutra, which was Brei de Rav Zira, the son of Rav Zira, Afila ben nedarim, and this was even regarding the nedarim, Shahaya lehem pnaim ibad yaim, they had time even before Shabbos to give a heta for these nedarim, and nevertheless they attended to this matter on Shabbos itself for the purpose of Shabbos to nullify the neder or to uproot the neder, the way a chacham does it. As the Gemara says, Savar of Yosef Lemeimar, there's another point there. When a chacham uproots the neder, there's two ways. It could either be by one individual, which is called a chacham, a yachid mumche, just one chacham, which is an expert, and he could uproot the neder. And if you don't have one chacham, which is a mumche, you have to have three. A bezdin of three, even of simple people, they can give you a heta for this neder. So Rav Yosef thought to say, Nish'ala nedarim b'Shabbos b'yachid mumche. This that you can request a heta for Shabbos, on Shabbos for the neder, is only if it's a yachid which is an expert. B'yachid mumche in. Only a yachid that's a mumche, that's allowed, because it's not similar to a bezdin. As I mentioned before, on Shabbos you're not allowed to have a bezdin. But if it's three, even though if it's three, it could be just any plain people, but that's not allowed. Because that looks like you're using a bezdin on Shabbos. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye answered, no, that this is not so. Kivin this Svirelon, because behold, halacha is that this bezdin is very different than a regular bezdin that's used usually. Because afilu mu'ummad, first of all, the bezdin of 3 that's matra neder, they could even be standing, which is unlike usually by a din Torah, the bezdin has to be sitting. Afilu b'kreivim, and these people that are being used to be matra neder could even be your relatives. Usually by a din Torah, the dayanim, the judges, can't be your relatives. And also afilu balayla. The hataras and darim could even be at night, and also by our din Torah, din imam is usually din Torah. Bezdin is not open at night; they can't judge by night. Because of all of these differences, you clearly see that it doesn't look like a regular din Torah, and therefore it can be done even on Shabbos with 3. So he said, Ravuna said in the name of Rav, halacha mefir nedarim balayla. The halacha is you can nullify nedarim at night. The Gemara, why does this have to be said? What's the chiddush here that afaras nedarim is by night? V'hamas nisinhi. This is what it clearly says in the Mishnah. The Mishnah's example was nadra belele Shabbos. She made a neder the night of Shabbos, and you could be made for the neder. The Mishnah says the whole night and then the whole day. So it says it in the Mishnah. Elaima, the Gemara says the pshat over here is the chiddush is eime halacha nishalim balayla. He was coming to say the halacha nishalim, that you can request a heter of a chacham to do it at night as well. Okay, so the Mishnah was talking about hafaras nedarim, when a father or a husband is being made for the neder. Over here we're talking about even the nishalim of a chacham being made to the neder, that which is similar to a din Torah, that could be done at night. So the Gemara now explains, or rather, Amalei Rab Abba Rav Huna, Rab Abba, which repeated this in the name of Rav Huna, that said it in the name of Rav. So Omar Rav Hachi, did Rav actually say this? Amalei ishtik. No, Rav did not say it. I said this halacha in front of Rav, and when Rav heard me saying this halacha, he was quiet. So that's why I'm repeating it in the name of Rav, because Rav agreed to what I said when he was quiet. Amalei, so Rav Abba said to Rav Huna, if he was only quiet, ishtik ka'amris, maybe when he was quiet, it's because he was not agreeing to you. He was sort of telling you, be quiet, do not say this halacha, I disagreed with this. Maybe that's why he was quiet. Oy, shasti ka'amris. Or maybe Rav was quiet when you said the halacha because he was sort of saying to you, come, let's drink together. In other words, it's like an expression of agreement. Let's drink on this halacha, that he agrees to this halacha. So he says it's not clear that Rav himself actually holds this. So the Gemara here brings another thing that happened with Rav, and we see what Rav holds. So Amar Rav Ikke bar Ovin is dakek le Rav le Rabba. So we know that Rav attended to Rabba when it came to a situation of a neder, or some say that you go to say Rav Chananel. And where was this? This was Bikituna de Beirav. This was in this small room that Rav would daven there. It's like a small room on the side in a room of the Bismedrash, like what we call today a Cheder Sheni, right? So Oymid and Rav, he was mated the neder while he was standing. Right? That's one point we mentioned before, that you don't, even though it's like a din Torah, but he could stand. Yechidi, he was alone without anyone else, just him himself. Rav was a Yochid Mumche, Ubalayla, and it was also at night. So we clearly see that Rav himself did this, that even by night he was mated the neder. Sagt the Gemara, Amar Rabbe, Amar Rav Nachman, or some say Amar Rav, Amar Rav Nachman, halacha, nisharim, nedarim. The halacha is that a chacham you could request a heter from him for the neder. Oymid, when he's standing, Yechidi, he's alone, Ubalayla, and he's at night, Ubeshabbos, and even on Shabbos, as we said before, for the purpose of Shabbos, Ubekroivim, and even relatives. And even if there was time during the day before Shabbos to be mated the neder, still on Shabbos you're allowed to be mated the neder. So the Gemara asks on this point of Oymid, that the halacha is that a chacham mated the neder could be standing. But for Tanya, in Abraisa we learned as follows, that Rabbi Gamliel came down from his donkey, and v'nisatif, and he wrapped himself in a garment, and v'yoshav, and he sat down, and v'hittalei nidrei, and then he was mat to someone on neder. So we clearly see over here that Rabbi Gamliel is sort of prepared himself, and he specifically sat down to be mat to the neder. How could he say that you could be standing? Says the Gemara, you're right, this is taka machlokes here. It depends how the chacham is being mat to the neder. Rabbi Gamliel's opinion is, and we're going to go with the big girsa that the Bach brings over here, and a lot of Rishonim will go this way, ein paischem b'charata. You cannot give an opening, you cannot be mater a neder just by the person coming and saying, I regret my neder. If he just regrets the neder, that's not enough. Right? Meke nidra be'inan. You have to uproot the neder from the beginning, which is with a Pesach. What's the difference between a Pesach and a Charata? Charata means, today, right now, I regret the neder is too hard for me to keep, I regret it. A Pesach means something else. That you prove that there's a flaw in the neder from the beginning. You show that if you would have been aware of this situation in the beginning, you would have never made that neder. Right? So that's something you buy a uni. In order to see that it's a real Pesach, that there's a flaw in the neder from the beginning, so that's something that you have to examine deeper. So therefore, ahachi, for such a matter, Yasha, he sat down to examine it properly. That's the opinion of Rabbi Gamliel. Therefore, he sat down. But for Rav Nachman Savar, Rav Nachman, that says that the halacha is that you can be mefid or mata rather than a Nedarim even when you're standing. He holds, and here again the Bach changes the girsa, that the paischim b'charata, that you could be paiseyach even with charata, as long as the person comes and says that I regret it. So you don't have to examine the matter very deeply. Therefore, you could do it even while filamum and even while you're standing. Amalei Rav Nachman, Rav said to Rav Nachman regarding the hataris nedarim of a chacham, the way it was done from the chachamim in Eretz Yisrael. Chazimar, did the master see, Hai Merabanan, this one of the Talmidei Chachamim, the Asamim Marava, he came from Eretz Yisrael, Va'amar, and he said, Is dakekele Rabbanon lebrei de Rav Huna bar Ravin, that the Rabbanon, so they attended to the son of Rav Huna bar Ravin, V'sharele nidre, and they were matter his neder, but they were very harsh with him. Even after they were matter his neder, Va'amrulei, they said to him, Zil uboy rachmi al nafshech, go and beg for mercy on your soul. The chatas, you sinned. The fact that you made a neder, even though now we gave you a heter, but you sinned. Because the Tani Rav Dimi Achud Rav Safre, and we had this already before in the Gemara, Kol al noider, a person that makes a neder, Afal Pishum Mekaimoi, even if you are keeping your neder, Nikra Chayte, you're considered to be a sinner. The Eibush doesn't want a person to make nedarim. We learned before, it's like building a bama and so on. Amar Rav Zvid said, Maikra, where do I learn this out from in the pasuk? Because it says, V'chisechtal linder, if you will refrain of making a neder, la'iyah b'chachet, you will not have any sin. Ha'loy chadalta, if you don't refrain from making a neder, ikechet, so this is considered to be an aveira. And now the Gemara brings a braise going back to a husband nullifying the nedarim of his wife. Right, so we were speaking here about a chacham. Exactly how much attention did you have to give to this to be mater neder? Should be standing, sitting? Is it enough just charata or is it a pesach? But when it comes to a husband, the husband has the power to nullify his wife's nedarim. Right, he doesn't have to find no pesach, no charata. But if here the Gemara says that still it has to be a proper hafara. So Tanya, we learned in the Braise, the person says to his wife, "Kol nedarim shetuduri." Any nedarim that you will vow, you will make a neder. I don't want this neder. So ain's a neder. Or he says that this is not a neder. Layom this is nothing. Now, even though the lashon of the Braisa sort of seems like that the husband is saying this before the wife made a neder, but we already had before in the Gemara that that's only the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says you could nullify nedarim before she made the nedarim. But the Ran says when it says shetaduri, it also means, according to the other opinion, that says you could only nullify the nedarim after the neder was made. So what it's saying over here is when a husband nullifies the nedarim that his wife already made, and he heard the nedarim that she made, and she uses, the husband that is, uses this expression. He doesn't use a proper expression that I nullify your nedarim. He just says, I don't want it. Or he says it's nothing. It's not a neder. Lo yamaklum, he didn't say anything. Why? Because he didn't clearly say an expression that means that I'm nullifying the neder. He's just saying it's not a neder. So really the hafara remains all in his heart. He's revealing in his words that in his heart he doesn't want the neder. So the point of here is that the hafara, nullifying a neder that remains belev in your heart, is not a good hafara. You have to actually say a lashon of hafara. Okay, but now, on the other hand, though, the power of the husband is also to validate nedarim. If he says to his wife, Yafa Sisa, you did very good by making this neder. There's nobody is like you. You made such a neder. It's amazing. So these are all expressions that he agrees to the neder. And then he says, or another expression, if you wouldn't have made this neder, I would have made this vow for you, then dvarav kayamim. This is considered to be a validation of the neder. In other words, the chiddush over here is that Ram points out. We'll see later in the Gemara when it comes to validating the neder, validating it belev in your heart is a validation. So therefore, even though the expression he's saying is not an actual validation, he's just expressing approval, but he's not saying actual words of validation. It remains in the heart. It is a validation. Interesting, true, and a chanami. But over here the Gemara is saying regarding the expression of it, it's not the same. The Rosh actually points out a very good svara, geshmak svara, to explain the difference. When it comes to hakama, you see in the Torah that hakama can be done passively. How does a husband validate a neder? Either he clearly says he's kaim the neder, or if the whole day passes and he knows about it and he doesn't react, that itself is hakama, passively. By a fada, there's no such a thing. You can't nullify a neder passively. You have to clearly be made for the neder. So the fact that the Torah says that the hakama could be passively, that shows that it doesn't have to be verbally, it could be even belev. Where by a fada, though, it has to be explicitly and clearly. When a person is nullifying the Nedarim of his wife on Shabbos, so even though we said before it's allowed, but he should do it differently. Don't say to your wife on Shabbos, Mufalechi, usually the way you have to express it, Mufalechi, that I nullify it for you, Batalechi, that I revoke or I nullify, Kederach Shaimala B'chayil, the way you express it during the week. You have to change the Lashon. I guess on Shabbos there's an inyan for the covet of Shabbos to change the Lashon. It's a way the Ran basically explains it. What he tells her on Shabbos is, Tli v'achli, you made a neder not to eat. The husband tells her, take food and eat, Tli yishsi, take the drink and drink. And va'neder, batel me'elov. And the neder will be batel on its own. Okay, so in other words, over here, the chiddush he's saying is, even though we just said that it's not enough to be made for the neder in your heart, you have to be made for the neder verbally. So he didn't use the actual lashon of afara verbally, but nevertheless, the fact that he's telling her, go and eat, that's counted, that's considered to be an expression of the afara. He's not just saying, Ein neder, no neder. He's saying, go and eat. So that's already enough of an expression of his afara that he had in his heart. Rabbi Yechanan said, but v'tzarech shivatel b'liboy. This that it says here, that you can go and eat, it's not just he's telling her, go and eat even though it's a neder. I'm commanding you to do something against your neder. No, the point here is that there's a hafara belev, that he means to nullify the neder. Elamai and Shabbos, the way you express that hafara is not so explicit. The way it is during the week, you express it by telling her, go ahead and eat. The Gemara brings the Braisa, Tanya, and the Braisa we learned, Beishamah, Yemen and Beishamah say, B'Shabbos, mevatel b'libay. On Shabbos, you mevatel the neder in your heart. Right, and you do it the way that we just described over here. That in your heart you mevatel the neder, and then you verbally you don't clearly say the hafara, but you tell her go ahead and eat. During the week, so you express clearly and you say mufra lech or bat lech. You have to say a clear lashon that you mevatel the neder. He'll say echad zeh, whether during the week, whether during Shabbos, mevatel b'liboy, it would be enough that you mevatel the neder in your heart, and then you tell her go ahead and eat. And go ahead, you have to actually express at least that, even though you're not saying clearly mufalech ve'ein tzarach lo yitzi b'svasa. The actual afara, you don't have to express verbally. So the Gemara. So you see that there's a difference between a person saying ein zeh neder, expressing it by saying ein zeh neder is not adequate enough, but expressing it by actually telling her go ahead and eat, that's considered to be an expression of your afara belev, and it's not going to be belev anymore. That's a proper afaras nedarim. Okay.